This lesson is part of Media, Mobiles, and Ministry, which is a curriculum set of over 40 lesson plans covering 4 different topic areas: foundations of media ministry, mobile ministry, social media ministry, and do-it-yourself mobile media creation. You can find more information at www.mobmin.org/train. Welcome to Media, Mobiles, and Ministry and the social media track of our lesson plans. And this is Introduction to Social Media Ministry. So just kind of an overview of social media ministry. And the reason we do this is, I think, self-evident. People all over the world have made social media a major part of their lives. And even if social media does not always have a positive influence, we have an opportunity to use it as a ministry tool to help communicate the gospel and connect with people. So that's why we want to approach this as an opportunity. And, why use social media? And again, I think we have an intuitive sense that social media is a big thing. About half the world's population is active on social media. The fastest growing markets a couple of years ago were in Central and Southern Asia, and the majority world, this is increasing in its use. YouTube, for instance, as a channel alone, reaches more people 18 to 49 years old than any other cable network, television broadcast, satellite network, anything in the world with its content. And we know that 99% of active social media users are accessing it on their mobile device. So that's also something that helps us understand the way that people are going to engage in social media. It's going to be on their mobile device. It's not going to be on a computer in most cases for most people. So what can we do with social media in ministry? What ways can we think about it? And I want to give you several examples in the course of this lesson plan to help you think about how social media is being used to help stir up your own ideas. So this is a video. It's about a 2-minute video from a worker focused on identifying seekers and then connecting them with field workers. And she has an interesting story to tell and an invitation to us as well. Let's watch this.
This is Jessica. Jessica uses her background in social media to add to the effectiveness of her team's church planting efforts.
I'm part of a small team of media professionals that work in digital media, using digital tools to reach people with the gospel online, using it more like looking for seekers, and then once we get those seekers, we send their contact information to our local church planting network.
Their team has a localized website and corresponding Facebook page that they use to find people of peace, those who want to know more about Jesus. They run campaigns and contests that focus on common misconceptions about our faith, and sometimes they give away Bibles in the local language as prizes. But they feel that their website and Facebook outreach just isn't quite enough.
We want to expand to other platforms that are growing in popularity in our area, and those include Instagram and YouTube. As far as Instagram goes, we see a big potential because a lot of people use that as far as Instagram stories and sharing pictures and selfies. It's a big selfie culture where we live. And so being able to utilize that to get scripture out there, as well as find even more seekers, perhaps of a younger generation, than what might be using on Facebook.
Many church planting teams around the world are wanting to incorporate media strategies, but they don't know how to begin or which resources they may need.
If like-minded workers banded together, we could probably see even more engagement. I'm only one person, and I'm the only person on my team working social media, but if we had other people working together with maybe other specialties where we could share content, that would really make a big difference.
Let us know if this resonates with you or your team in some way. We can help.
Well, I really like Jessica's invitation to collaborate, right? She can't do it alone. Are there other people who could join with her and her team? And I think that's just an important principle that we can all learn from and all benefit from, right? So another example of this is a traditional media sort of ministry, Joy FM, which is a Romanian radio station. And they've got a young audience. They focus on biblical themes and biblical content, asking questions. They have programs that discuss different topics and ask questions. And then what they're doing with social media is connecting their broadcast radio ministry with Facebook pages. And Facebook pages help them add lots of things, like They can add articles and discussions on regular topics that they're having on radio programs or things that seem popular with listeners that they get a lot of feedback on. They can also then develop discussion boards. They can use Facebook Messenger and other ways to connect with people or have running threads of discussions on different topics. And they also are able, through Facebook's tools, to identify and find people and connect with them so that they can have life-on-life, real-world relationships to connect with people. So they're using a traditional broadcast sort of old technology, right? Connecting with social media in a really creative way. So there's all sorts of ways that we can take advantage of what social media can do. The last example is in the Middle East. We can't give the name of the country or too many specifics. So in a lot of places, people are using WhatsApp to build discussion groups to discuss the scriptures, for instance. And so their WhatsApp groups are advertised in different ways. Sometimes it's word of mouth or sharing on other WhatsApp groups or inviting friends. And once a person is indicated an interest in becoming part of a group, they're divided up into different interest levels, sort of a beginning level, a middle level, and a more deep level of biblical discussion. And these are moderated by local believers who have language and cultural context and everything. And so it's not a lot of advertising or web pages or things like that, but it's done within a messaging system like WhatsApp. And they're using that as a way to have safe conversations with people, to gather people together who might not normally be able to connect in person, and they're taking advantage of that technology to do that. What I want to do now is an activity. I'm going to send you off, and I want you to do a little bit of research, just a few minutes of research about the state of digital media, social media in your local context, the place that you want to work. And so what we've provided in the lesson plan are links, and I'll click on one of the links here, to a data portal Global Digital Overview. And this is a SlideShare deck that was created by Hootsuite and We Are Social. And it has a lot of data about the state of the world. And this is where it's a good place to find the latest data on internet adoption, social media, all sorts of things. So for instance, this is where we get our statistic: 49% of the world's population are active social media users out of 7.75 billion people in the year 2020. This has got data like that, but it also has data at the country level. And so I'll click back a couple of slides. And on the 5th slide in here, you can look at all these countries. So one of these countries is either perhaps your country you're focused on or one very close to it. And for instance, I'll pick Indonesia here because I have friends working in Indonesia. And if I click on the digital guide for Indonesia, what it comes up, one of the things it does is it gives me sort of a high-level view of things. For instance, the number of internet users in Indonesia, social media users, mobile connections, and I could dig deeper into these data sets to learn what people are doing, where people are doing it. Okay, so there's that global digest, and then there's another resource that we have a link to called the Digital Ministry Atlas of Least Reached Countries, and this is from the Mobile Ministry Forum. So this is a digital PDF file covering countries in this region of the world. And if you click on it, it gives you a PDF and it has data on 40 different countries. So what I want you to do as a group is break up into the class, into smaller groups, teams or individuals, and take a few minutes to dig into these. Get the links from the instructor, from the lesson plan, and dig in to find the region or a country that you are interested in, and then ask yourself some questions. For instance, what kinds of things can you learn about the technology use, the channels that are being used, and what things might have surprised you? So go take about 5 minutes. You can pause the tape here and come back, and then you'll discuss it amongst your classmates. Okay, we're back. We've had our little discussion, and what I would do now in a class, I would just invite several people in the group to share what things they learned. What kinds of things did you learn about your country? What are some statistics about data use, mobile phones, internet adoption, channels that are popular, and maybe even share some surprises. Is there anything that was surprising to you, or something that you didn't really realize about the country you're in? Was there anything new to you? Share that amongst the different teams and the people in the class. And it's important for us to just sort of find these different kinds of resources because it gives us different views of things, and sometimes it stirs up our own imagination of what's possible to do. All right, so after you have that discussion, we'll keep moving on. It's great to know statistics, but statistics aren't everything, right? What are some good ways to think about using social media? And one of the ways that we want to think about it is that it's just a single tool in a broader toolbox. It is not the only thing that you're going to do in ministry, obviously. You're going to have gatherings, large group gatherings, small group gatherings. You're going to have public events and private events. You're going to have service events into the community, different kinds of ministry activities that you might be developing as a team. Social media can serve those, but it's not going to be everything, right? Another way to think of it is as a stepping stone and not the bridge. It's not the whole thing that gets you everywhere you want, all the way that you want to go. There's an article in the lesson plan called It's a Stepping Stone, Not a Bridge. And I think what that article talks about, it's talking about donors in a Western sort of a context, but we can apply it to our context as well. It really is a great platform for interaction in some ways, right? It gets people connected, it gets conversations started, but then it's not really intended to replace face-to-face interaction in the real world, right? Social media is a piece of it. It can help get us there, but it's not everything. Just want to reassure you and reiterate that. In order to engage in social media well, one of the things we do have to do, though, is understand our audience. And we want to ask the question, who are they? How well do we know the people we are trying to reach in our social media world? What kinds of questions are they asking? Are there things that they struggle with? Are there things that they often search for? Are there things going on in the community that people are asking questions about? Is there an event that happened in an individual person's life that they need an answer for? Social media can help us connect with them and do that. It's important to realize that we are not likely able to reach everyone all at once with one sort of message. So it's best to pick a particular kind of person. So we call this a persona. And in the lesson plan, we did provide a link to a persona creation toolkit from Indigitus, which is a partner ministry of ours. And we will also talk about personas in much more detail in 2 different lessons in our social media ministry lesson plans that we're providing. So we're going to be asking questions like who are they, what their questions are, that sort of thing, but also where do they engage with their media content, and what kinds of things can we ask them to do wherever we encounter them. So we'll explore that in more detail in future lessons. Another thing that we want to think about and talk about is this idea of engagement. If you look at a social media site, so to a social media network like Facebook, engagement means all sorts of different things. It means likes, it means following pages, it means sharing posts, comments, retweets if you're on Twitter, those sorts of things. But in a ministry context for Christians, I want to think of it in a little bit different way. And I like to think of it as a conversation. Real engagement that I want in social media is a 2-way interaction. I'm imagining that I'm having a conversation with a person. It could be a conversation in a discussion thread, or I'm actually messaging with somebody. Or it could be an offer that I make to say, would you like to download this scripture portion so you can read more about what Jesus says about this? They agree and they download it. There's an exchange. There's a 2-way interaction that we have. So that's an example of what I would consider to be healthier, deeper engagement that we really want to aim for. We might also begin with just sort of asking questions. Could our content not just post a Bible verse, but also ask a question about the theme that Bible verse addresses? So it invites that sort of a conversation with people. We might also invite people to share prayer requests. We find that in many cultures of the world, even if people are not interested specifically in Jesus, very often people are willing to let you pray for them and are encouraged by that. And it could be an opening to a conversation. So let's not forget to do those kinds of things. Let's talk about tactics and tips for positive engagement in social media. So it kind of plays on this same sort of a theme with engagement here and different ways we can do it. One of them is that consistency is a key. It's really important. Social media channels are changing all the time. If we only post once a month, people will not get to know us very well. Okay, people will lose interest. So being able to maintain some regular presence on social media, it'll vary on the channels and what your resources are, but figuring out how to do that regularly is a challenge, but it's really important for us. A mixture of content's important. Don't feel paralyzed because you can't create professional level films to constantly churn out on your Instagram story channel or YouTube channel, but a mix is okay. Find really interesting, good quality content, and then that's video content if you can't create it, and then post your own Bible verses and memes and questions and things like that. That's a mix of things. People like that too. But we do want to emphasize quality storytelling, and I underline story because stories are really important. If we can avoid posting data or just information about things, but telling stories or inviting people to share their stories, it's much more engaging. And we want to do that with good quality. Think about how stories are told in your local culture that you're trying to reach. It might be different from your own home culture. Learn that and think about how you can tell good quality stories. A clear call to action is another thing that we want to think about. When people see our channel, do they have a clear sense of what we want them to do? Are we inviting them into a conversation? Are we inviting them to engage with us in some way? Give them a clear call to action, and you might even have a button on the screen that says, share your prayer request here. Or would you like to click here to download a portion of the scriptures to read it, and then we can talk about that. Asking relevant questions to what they are talking about, not just talking about what we think is important, but what they're thinking about. That's a good practice. And also offering a contrasting point of view. And this is where we have the opportunity within a very conservative traditional system of thought, for instance, opening up the possibility to consider an alternative point of view. Not an antagonistic point of view, but an alternative point of view in a very positive way to engage them and open up their imagination to what might be possible for them. Okay. Now, I want to end with a couple of things. I want to show one more story, and this is from a friend of mine who's engaged with a very, very difficult group in Central Asia using Facebook pages and Messenger. And I want him to tell his story to you right now.
Though I knew nothing about Facebook 9 months ago, now 9 months later I have more engagements than I can handle, really. I see Facebook and potentially other social media as a door opener to get into relationships, so I decided to use Facebook as a more or less an experiment to see if I can get into more hearts in many different places I couldn't walk to, and especially now that I'm back in the West. Anybody can do this. Some people could do more deeper, but it's building friendship through distance or up close and following through with that the best we can. On Facebook, they post Quranic verses, they post friendship kind of things, like here's a photograph of us standing together. They post things like sports events, but also they talk about corruption and problems in society, the war, the things in the funnel that you are looking for that are disrupting society. And I like to post things that are very provocative, deep, scriptural, and yet sometimes not focusing just on the visuals but more on the content to make sure we don't have ambiguity. You know, what are they liking? Is it the photograph or the content? I want to make sure I understand they're liking the content as much as the photographs or visuals. $5,000 said I like this, and maybe 30 said basically I want to kill you, or I want to make sure that no one looks at your page.
Okay.
And maybe 20 or 25 said I love this. When someone says I like your post or I love your post, I want to respond to that somehow, and I prefer doing it individually, but with 5,000 likes it's almost impossible. Whether a person's been engaging people for 4 years, 4 months, we all have an opportunity to engage deeply with local people, especially as we look them in the eye and do things for the local person that no one else is doing. That is showing genuine interest and love. With love and respect, inviting all Muslims to follow Jesus, but with love and respect, showing them you're a listener and you want to engage. Anybody can do this.
Again, I appreciate our friends at Mobiles and Media for a great little testimony there. So let's wrap up now. And I want to ask the question, what does this mean for your team? What kinds of questions might you need to talk through as a team as you talk about the possibility of doing social media ministry? What vision and call do you sense from God on behalf of the people you love and serve? Is there something that God is stirring you up to do in some new way? What interests and gifts do you think you already have on your team? And there's certain kinds of gifts that people like to engage in social media and some people don't, right? We know this. What time and energy do you have to give? What kind of scale could we do this at so it doesn't suck up all of our time, right? And what resources might we need to be more engaged on social media? What are we missing? What do we need to learn? So finally, I want you to do some learning activities. And I want you to break up into smaller groups or teams. Again, think about the questions that were just on that last slide, but also here's some other prompts for you to kind of stir up your own discussion. So why do you believe social media would be a good use in your ministry context? Or just some things that you're thinking of now that could be very useful, could be very positive? And what do you see as some of the struggles or negatives to using social media in your context? It might be things like time and resources or security or other kinds of really good questions that you need to ask. And maybe brainstorm some ideas about how those might be addressed and fixed. And so I want you to send you off into groups in the class to spend some time doing this. Maybe spend 20 minutes or so doing this as teams or individuals, depending on your context, and answer some of these questions and the ones on that last slide and see what kinds of ideas you come up with and some other questions that you need to learn about or ask. And then we'll wrap up the class. So the very final thing we'll do in a class is bring everyone back together after a discussion like that. And what I'd love to hear is some participants' ideas of things that you came up with. Is there an idea that was raised in this lesson that you may want to think about in your ministry? Or what kinds of questions or challenges came up for them that we need to find more answers for in our context? Spend some time thinking about that. This was just the first lesson in the social media set of lessons, and each one of them builds on detail and different kinds of specific activities. I hope this was a good overview and an introduction to get your appetite and get your questions going, and I thank you very much for listening.